which is a land of bondage, a place of bondage. For us coming out of kata or sin, that is a place of bondage. It is our Egypt. Okay. So we fast forward. And then we have the Midianites. And the Midianites, this is once we've crossed over, we've had the leadership of Yehoshua in the land of Canaan. And, things are going good. And Yehoshua dies. And unfortunately, all that generation who had to witness their parents die in the wilderness, they have now crossed over. And then they did really good. And so now we have that generation has passed. Maybe that first, second generation. And then we have, the grandkids, the great-great-grandkids, and they've lived life a certain way. This is all they've known. So what happens is that when you get repetitive and you get content in something, hey, this is all I know, or this is all I do. All I do is Sabbath. All I do is Shabbat. All I do is these festivals. Then if you get content in that, and you let your fire go down, you become interested in something else. Something else perk your fancy. So what happens to the children of Israel, they start fornicating, and I say fornicating literally, but also fornicating with their culture and the different styles of the Midianites. And every time they would do this, they would be under oppression or under bondage of a Midianite leader or king, and they would cry out to Yah, and Yah would lift up or raise up someone to deliver them, quote unquote. And you would have this cycle. Okay. You'd have this cycle. And fast forward. Now we've hit a monarchy where we've had Shaul, David, and Solomon, Shlomo. So we have three kings, all had different territories, all had kind of different. Solomon obviously expanded, but they all had different ways to the throne, so to say. All of their routes were different. So we have three kings. So now we have Israel being a nation state, so to say. And then after Solomon dies, we have a revolution. We have a revolt between Jeroboam and Rehoboam. And Jeroboam is representing the northern kingdom, and Rehoboam is representing the southern kingdom. And Jeroboam had a chance to lead righteously and so on and so forth, but he chose to establish calves and idolatry and bring in sun worship and things like that. So we fast forward to about maybe the year 722 BC or so, and the Assyrians come in. And long story short, they take out the 10 tribes of Israel, the northern kingdom, 10 tribes. So then they're gone. So they take out the 10 tribes. Okay. So now you're left with Judah, Benjamin, and the Levitical system. You probably have some refugee of the 10 tribes mingled in amongst the southern kingdom. Then around 586 or so, we have the rise of the Babylonians. And the Babylonians come and do exactly what the Syrians did, but it's to the southern kingdom. So now we have the Babylonians come, and, Judah is like her treacherous sister Israel, and she's in all kind of crazy stuff. But they're a little bit more, ratchet, because everything they do, they put Yah on it. Even though they love the Queen of Heaven, they just put Yah on it. So let me fast forward. We get to the Medo-Persian empires, and the Medo-Persians come in because they knock over the Babylonians, and now the people of Judah, Yehuda, they are under the Medo-Persian rule or reign, so to say. And then we get to what we know as the Grecians, the Grecos, the Grecians. All right. And then this is what we get, a Hasmonean revolt or the Maccabean revolt. Right, so Alexander the Great, Alexander the Greek. And then after that, we have the Romans, which is primarily of our New Testament. We have the Roman rule. So we have our Caesars and our Neros, and we have these people, Tacitus, all these different people. Then after the fall of the Holy Roman Empire really begins what we would know as Christianity. And Christianity, in its rise, was very violent and very forceful with conversion, and establishing its own way. And then a little bit after Christianity, we have Islam. Right? We have Arab Islam, which also takes place on the Arabian Peninsula, where there were also a lot of Yahudim. So we have empires, and then we have two religions. And we just have the religions on there because with all of these situations, Egyptians, Midianites, Assyrians, Babylonians, Medo-Persians, Grecians, Romans, Christianity, Islam, they got something in common. Assimilation. Bottom line, assimilation. So the Chanukah is a reminder of people. You have two types of people. People that are going to assimilate, and you got another group of people who say, I'm not going to assimilate. And this season is a great reminder to remind you of how close you are to assimilation and how assimilation happens. So we have mental assimilation, your mind, you have assimilated mentally. You have mentally associated yourself or assimilated into a society or a system. This is a your mind. This is just a regular day, regular format for you. We also have emotional assimilation. You are emotionally attached. That's when you say things like, I love this country. I love this. You are emotionally attached. Then we have physically being assimilated, that you partake in everything that whatever you have associated yourself with, you partake into everything. And then last but not least, probably the most important, we have spiritually assimilated, spiritual assimilation. So this season, as we close out Chanukah at sunset or sundown, we got to make sure that we're not assimilating mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. We got to make sure that we are not assimilating mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. So in all those empires and all those ideologies and thoughts in the previous slide, from the Egyptians all the way down to Arab Islam, something is in common with every one of them: assimilation. Some people assimilated to the way of the Egyptians. Some assimilated to the way of the Midianites. Some people assimilated to the way of the Assyrians. Some assimilate to the way of the Babylonians. Some assimilate to the way of the Medo-Persian reign. Some assimilate to the way of the Grecians. Some assimilate to the Romans. Assimilate to the Christianity. Assimilate into Islam. So you have become part of something that is an adverse or an adversary to the Most High God. So this season is a reminder and a warning for you not to become assimilated. And people assimilate for a variety of reasons. Weakness is one. Have some people throughout history assimilated and then practice the Torah in private and in secret. But weakness is one. How strong or how firm is our walk in Yah? It's an aspect of assimilation. Got a picture on one side. My bad. We have the natives here. Look at them. Cultural, tribal. Look at them over here. That's assimilation. Cultural assimilation occurs when an ethnic minority sacrifices its own culture to integrate into society. So we have to know, we have to be aware, cautious that we are not assimilating and sacrificing our own culture into a society that is not for, with, or about the Most High God. What is your culture? Do you know? What is your culture? I hear people talk about culture all the time, and then next thing you know, they're on a compound. They got 10, 15 women talking about these are my wives, and they swear them up and down. That's culture. Right. Marcus Garvey, he says the people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. Have the Ethiopian congregation back in the early 1900s. This should be your culture. Shabbat, Sukkot, dedication, Yom Kippur, unleavened bread, Passover. These are your culture. And cultural assimilation is when you get rid of your culture for somebody else's culture. You denounce the things of the Most High. You denounce the things that Yahshua put his life on the line for us for something else. So we have to be a people that say, hey, I'm fed up and I refuse to assimilate. I refuse to assimilate. I'm not going to assimilate. I'm not going to do what you want me to do. And that is a thing, that is the thing that we which is right to glorify it. And in this season, it's right to glorify it. But people said, I'm fed up. Right. We have the Matthias, the priest of Modin. He sees one of his own countrymen. Like, I'll do the sacrifice to Zeus or whoever, because it's the new way. No offense, but it's the liberal way. Right? You have people who are very staunch with their traditional values of Torah and culture, but the Grecian way comes in like a I don't know, California wave. Just comes in, just floods in everything. And some people, they feel like, hey, this is new. This is let's philosophize about this. This is good. This is good. So you have the Maccabean Revolt. Maccabean Revolt in 167 through 160 BC was a Jewish uprising, the Judean and Judea against the repression of the Seleucid Empire. The revolt was led by a country priest called Matthias, and his military followers became known as the Maccabees. Successful Jerusalem was captured and the Temple of Jerusalem reconsecrated, an act still commemorated today in the Jewish Chanukah festival. So once they recaptured the temple, they did not stop fighting. Say it again. Once they recaptured the temple, they did not stop fighting. Once you have, said you wanted to make a change and you wanted to come to Shabbat and you wanted to keep the festivals and you wanted to eat clean and you wanted to do this and you don't stop fighting. The fight doesn't end. Technically now it's really gotten serious because you've made a stand, you've taken a stand against the way of the world. The world will hate you for his name's sake. Not name as in I pronounce the name properly, but name as in the character or the representation. Okay? The revolt achieved rapid success at the end of the year 164. Okay? So 164 is when they go back into the temple. The first festival of lights or inauguration was celebrated in a temple purified of all pagan cults. So we have to be willing to get rid of all aspects, right? This is a season to remind ourselves to get rid of all things that are not like Yah in our life, in our mind, in our heart. in things that we physically do. And yes, also in our spirit. We got to get rid of them. It's only through the festival that the revolt was transmitted to rabbinical posterity. The history of the revolt was retained only in Greek texts later preserved by Christian authors. Until 141 BC, however, a Seleucid garrison remained in the citadel of Jerusalem, protecting by its very presence those Jews who wished to maintain the Hellenistic way of life. We see this. Who wish to maintain the Hellenistic, right, the Grecian way. So there will be people who will not want to return back to this way of life. It's always been like that. This is the season that somewhat exposes it or shines light upon it. Okay. Speaking of shining light or exposing something, I bring a scripture to my mind. Bring something to my mind. Readers off work. Philippians. Philippians. We are told not to have any association with people in unfruitful works, but we are to expose them. You hiding from it. Where you at? It's Ephesians 5:11. Sure. So we are to Ephesians 5:10, proving what is acceptable unto the Lord, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. New King James says expose. For it is a shame even to speak of those things which are done of them in secret. So we've had murders and chaos and destruction and the temple taken, now the temple taken back. And people say, hey, you know what? It's better. The Hellenistic way of life is better. I refuse my culture. I refuse the goodness of God. Let's look at 1 Corinthians, 3rd chapter. First Corinthians 3 and verse 1. And it reads, and I, brethren, could not speak unto you as unto spiritual, but as unto carnal, even as unto babes in Christ. I fed you with milk and not with meat, for hitherto you were not able to bear it, neither are you now able. Right? This is about growth. This is how, look, carnality will keep you from growing now. It's like, I can only feed you with milk. You're not ready to eat meat. You can't bear it. For ye are yet carnal, for whereas there is among you envying and strife and divisions, are you not carnal and walk as men? For while one saith, I am of Paul, another, I am of Apollos, are you not carnal? Who then is Paul? Who is Apollos, but ministers by whom ye believe, even as the Lord gave to every man? I have planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. So then neither is he that planteth anything, neither is he that watereth, but God that giveth the increase. That he that planteth and he that watereth are one, and every man shall receive his own reward according to his own labor. For we are laborers together with God. You are God's husbandry. You are God's building. Okay, so God is building. He's building you. So the same way there were specific instructions we talked about earlier about Moshe getting the revelation or the word from Yah on how to build the temple, we're following the same pattern from the Shamaim. Don't you mess it up, not 1 millimeter. So this is the same thing. God is building you. And if he's building you and he's giving you something, i.e. your body, you must protect the house. You just don't let anybody in. You don't let anybody in your house and desecrate your house. It's your fault. If your house is out of order, it's your fault. And God said here, right here, during this season, it's a time for you to do what? Rededicate. According to the grace of God, which is given unto me as a wise master builder, I have laid the foundation, another builder thereon. Let every man take heed how he buildeth thereupon. For other foundation can no man lay that is laid, which is Yahshua HaMashiach. So some of these knuckleheads here are wanting to maintain a Hellenistic way of life. There's no structure in that. All your stuff is on the sand. Now, if any man build upon the foundation gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, stubble, every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire, and the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. If any man's work abide, which he hath built thereupon, he shall receive a reward. If any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved. Yet so as by fire. Know ye not that ye are the temple? You're the temple of Elohim. We have people in this history here of the Maccabean revolt. They fought like cats and dogs, like wild animals, to get back the temple. Will you not fight like a cat and dog to preserve your own temple, i.e. your body? And if not, why not? If you won't, how assimilated are you into this world? If we don't fight for our temple, if we don't fight for the Torah, if we don't fight for what God has provided for us, we're on suicide watch. Because you're not going to win. Because when we don't fight for God, we fight what? Against God. You're not going to win. Know ye not that you are the temple of God, that the Spirit of God dwells in you? If any man defile the temple of God, him shall God destroy. For the temple of God is holy. Which temple are you? Which temple are you? Let no man deceive himself. If any man among you seemeth to be wise in this world, let him become a fool that he may be wise. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. For it is written, he taketh the wise in their own craftiness. And again, the Lord knoweth the thoughts of the wise, that they are vain. So this is why we say assimilation of mind, heart, physically, and then spiritually. There's no way to get around it. Right? Yah is the one who can check the reins of our hearts. Quickly, we'll stay in 1 Corinthians. We'll be in the 6th chapter. Verse 12, all things are lawful unto me, but all things are not expedient. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any. Meats for the belly, and the belly's for meats, but God shall destroy both it and them. Now the body is not for fornication, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. And God hath both raised up the Lord, and will also raise up by his own power. Know ye not that your bodies are the members of Christ? Shall I then take the members of Christ and make them for members of a harlot? God forbid. What, know ye not that he which is joined to a harlot is of one body? For two saith he, shall be one flesh. But he that is joined unto the Lord is one spirit. Flee fornication. Every sin that a man does without the body, but he that committeth fornication sitteth against his own body. What, know ye not that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost, which is in you, which ye have of God, and you are not of your own, for you are bought with a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God. So we have the first there in 1 Corinthians 3, that God will destroy any man who destroys the temple, destroys your body. But then in this second section here in 6:12 through 20, God will destroy you for destroying your own temple. You see that? How in 1 Corinthians 3, he got an issue with somebody trying to destroy your temple. And then in 1 Corinthians 6, I got an issue with you for messing up your own temple. You see that? So the temple, we must protect the house. How serious is it to you? Do you understand it? So dedication, Chanukah, right? Dedication, consecration, to initiate something, right? Chanukah, to train up, dedicate, inaugurate, right? We have to train our bodies. We do. We have to dedicate it. We do. We absolutely do. This season is a reminder for you. So we cannot say on the day of judgment, well, nobody ever told me. You were supposed to remember and rejoice for 8 days. Just like what? Sukkot. 1 Corinthians 7:35, and I speak this for your own profit, not that I may cast a snare upon you, but for that which is comely, and that which you may attend upon the Lord without distraction. This is for your own. This is for your own good. Not that I may cast a snare upon you, but for that which is comely, and that ye may attend upon your master, upon who we looked at the last couple of weeks, okay? The one who is sovereign in your life, the center of my everything, without what? Distraction. If you are distracted, your temple will be invaded. It's as simple as I can put it. If you are distracted, your temple will be invaded. If you are distracted, you will be negligent with your temple. Either or. That's just following off of 1 Corinthians 6 and 1 Corinthians 3. So past events reflect future outcomes. Past events reflect future outcomes. Are we ready? Are we ready? So we had the Syrian Wars. The Syrian Wars was like from 274 to 168 BC. So you had about 6 wars between the Seleucid Empire and the Ptolemies. And all the Seleucids are, people of Anatolia and India, Turkey, and the Ptolemies were down there in Egypt, Alexandria, and up the Nile Valley. So long story short, you got all these wars going on, and it's going on around who? The people of Judah, the children of Israel. It ain't got nothing to do with them, but it's about them. So Daniel, 8th chapter. So in Daniel, the 8th chapter, he gets a vision about the he-goat. Okay, so we'll look at this in Daniel 8. Let me see. And he says, then I lifted up my eyes and I saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram which had 2 horns. The 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. I saw a ram pushing westward and northward and southward so that no beast might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver him out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. And I was considering, behold, a he-goat, came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. Okay, so it says the goat didn't touch the ground. In other words, the goat was so fast, it moved so quickly that its feet never touched the ground. You ever see somebody that can really run? They just be scooting on the ground. Like their feet, their feet even touching the ground. That was the he-goat. Maybe Chris used to run like that. I don't know. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram and broke his two horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground and stomped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. So we look at this ram with two horns, one's bigger than the other, probably because the Achaemenid Empire or the Medo-Persian Empire was two Medes and the Persians. And the Persians did become the dominant group out of that two groups. And then the he-goat is the Grecian Empire, and the horn is Alexander the Great. Okay, so this is what Daniel sees. Remember, Daniel is at this point in time in verse 1. He is he's a captive in Babylon under King Belshazzar. Okay, in this chapter we see where out of these, where it says the horn was broken from the he-goat. It goes in the four winds of heaven. Okay, the four winds of heaven. And, a little horn comes out, wax great. It casts down the stars of God and stomps upon them. It stops the prince. It stops the daily sacrifice. The sanctuary was cast down. This is in Daniel 8. Right, so it's a reminder. Okay, don't forget that Daniel was here in Babylon when he gets this dream, okay? And Babylon falls in 539 BC, and they fall to the Medo-Persian Empire, okay? This is the collapse of Babylon. All right, so Daniel gets insight about the Medo-Persian power, the ram, and their fall by the Grecians, the he-goat, and the foretelling of Alexander the Great, or as I like to say, Alexander the Greek. So the four winds mentioned in Daniel 8, this was the Hellenistic world by 300 BC. So Daniel is a captive in Babylon in 500 and something, and then by over 200 and 225, 250 years later, here we go. Your four winds: Cassander, Lysimachus, Seleucus, Ptolemy. Okay, these are your four winds, and here is Beta Israel, children of Israel. So these guys here have a war from like 284 to 170 something. They're fighting. They've had like 6 wars. So there's at some point in time, the Seleucids have control of Israel. And at some point in time, the Ptolemy had control over Israel. And depending on who the king was, depending on how free you were to worship. Message, depending on the ruler, meant on how free you were to worship. Message. Let's look at Romans 13 quickly. Depending on the ruler. Romans 13:1. Let every soul be subject to the higher power. For there is no power but of God, the powers that are ordained of God. Whoever therefore resists the power, resists the ordinance of God. They that resist shall receive themselves to damnation. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have the praise of the same. So Yah is in control of leadership. Who rules? Who's in control? That's what Yah does. So when he does that, and when he establishes leadership, doesn't matter who it is, good guy, bad guy, whatever, right? We still have to be subject to the higher power, that is the Most High, no matter what. No matter where we are, no matter where the Ptolemy dude is pretty cool, or the Seleucid dude's cool, the Seleucid dude's crazy, or you got this president, that president, we have to stay focused on the Most High and on the higher power. So we have our four winds, we have our four generals. So we see now these guys are going to be going back and forth, and the process is going to have a heavy effect on the people of Israel. So if this is the prerequisite for Hanukkah, this is the prerequisite for the abomination that makes desolation, what are we headed for? What are we headed for? So in Daniel 11, I got 29 through 31. I'll read 29 through 31. At the time appointed, he shall return and come toward the south, but it shall not be as the former or as the latter. For the ships of Shittim shall come against him. Therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. And the arm shall stand on his part, and they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength. They shall take away the daily sacrifice that shall take place, the abomination that makes desolation. All right, so I just got these 4 verses broken down. So Antiochus, the 4th, or Epiphanes, goes to Egypt to get rid of Physkon, but Rome is there, right? It says ships of Shittim is what the scripture says. Well, the actual Romans was there. There's a guy named Popilius Linnaeus, the infamous, we're going to draw a line in the sand, is what he did to Antiochus. He drew a circle around him, and he said, you're going to give me an answer today. You got your option. If you fight against them, you're fighting against them. It means war against Rome, or you can go home. He said, I'll think about it. He's like, no, player. And I'm thinking about it. Drew a circle around him. If you step out this circle without giving me an answer, that's an act of war. So the scripture says he was mad. This is why he was mad. So when he gets back to Jerusalem, he tears down people's homes. He built a fortress. He changed the name of Yah to Zeus. Established Olympias. Forced sacrifices. People had to sacrifice to Zeus now. No Shabbat, no weekly Shabbat. It's one thing when you miss Shabbat, but it's another one that take it from you. Now I'm gonna kill you if you go. Now if I'm already in a place now, then that's an easy choice. I'm like, well, shoot, I ain't really been doing it anyway. Remember, there were plenty of, how they call it, what they say? There were plenty of Jews who wished to remain the Hellenistic way of life. There were plenty. Sorry for messing anybody up. No more circumcisions. So you have a child, do not circumcise him on the 8th day. Committed the abomination that makes desolate, right? To sacrifice a pig on the altar. Stole temple treasury, left troops behind, was called the Reign of Terror. Military come in and leave their troops behind them, and they raping all the women. Killing the men, raping the women, you know. On Kislev 25th, a pig was sacrificed on the altar. The temple was shut down for 3.5 years. Can you imagine 3.5 years of no holy days, no Shabbat, being forced to eat unclean, everything that you've been doing since you started walking away? Can you imagine that? That's why Hanukkah is a revolving door. because your Messiah, your Master, your Savior, he says there's going to be another abomination that makes desolate. This is just a blueprint. This is just a copy of what happened before. In Daniel 11:32 and 33 through 35, and such as do wickedly against the covenant shall he corrupt by flatteries, but the people that do know their God shall be strong and do exploits. The ones who do know. Some people will give in to the words. Verse 32. People gave in to the words. You know what's going to happen in our time or our kids' time or our great-grand or our grandkids' time? People will give in to the what? Flatteries of the words, and they will cross or transgress the covenant. And they that understand among the people shall instruct many, yet they shall fall by the sword and by flame and captivity, by spoil in many days. And when they shall fall, they shall be hoping with a little help, but many shall cleave to them with flatteries. And some of them understanding shall fall to try them, to purge and to make them white, even the time of the end, because it is yet for the time appointed. So we have the Hellenistic Jews, they remained. And these are your the beginning of your proto-Sadducees. That marks the beginning of the proto-Sadducees. And the Hasidim, the Hasmonean family, the Maccabees, those that were opposed to the Syrians. This was the proto-Pharisee group. The revolt lasted for 7 years. And then this is about verse 35. Because it is yet for the time appointed. You're about 160 years to Mashiach, to Messiah being born. And maybe this is how the wise men interpreted this, and they were maybe they had an understanding. So Matthew 24, got a couple verses, and we'll stop. Matthew 24:9. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. You shall be many offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. Why? For his name's sake. So folks gonna be turning on people left and right. All these folks that's in the way, and they conscious. They love Jesus. You know what they're going to be doing? Calling that 731-424-TIPS. I know where they at. I know they said their building shut down, but they meet at so-and-so house at such and such o'clock, at such and such time. Many false prophets shall rise and deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Are we not seeing that in our time right now? Not a lot of love, but it abounds. It's far beyond comprehensible. But he that shall endure unto the what end, the goal to the end, the same shall be saved. Let's look at First Maccabees. I know opening up Chanukah, minister went through a lot of the Maccabees. He did a good job. I ain't got to do as much as he did. So Maccabees, book 1, chapter 1. So we have them talking about Alexander, the Macedonian from the land of Kittim. He made wars. He reigned 12 years, verse 7. He died. Verse 10. There came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been a hostage in Rome, and he reigned in the 130th and 7th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are around and about them. There's going to be people that's going to be like that. For as we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well. So people were going to agree. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinance of the heathen. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the custom of the heathens. Okay, in that place of exercise, you are butt naked. And you must reverse your circumcision to participate. And you must give obeisance to Zeus or Olympus or whoever. They made themselves uncircumcised, forsook the holy covenant, joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. And when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt. He might have the dominion of two realms. Wherefore he entered into Egypt in great multitude with chariots and elephants and horsemen and a great navy, and made war against Ptolemy, the king of Egypt. But Ptolemy was afraid of him and fled, and many were wounded to death. Thus they got strong cities in the land of Egypt, and he took spoils thereof. And after Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again in 143rd year, and went up against Israel and Jerusalem, a great multitude, entered proudly into the sanctuary, took away the golden altar, the candlestick of light, all the vessels thereof, the table, the showbread, the pouring vessels, the vials, the scissors of gold, the veil, the crowns, the golden ornaments that were before the temple, and pulled off. The adversary wants to come into your temple and take away all of your precious things. All of them. He also took the silver and gold, the precious vessels, took the hidden treasures which he found. When he had taken all away, he went into the own land, having made a great massacre and spoken very proudly. Therefore there was great mourning in Israel, every place where they were. So that the princes and elders mourned, the virgins and young men were made feeble, the beauty of women was changed, every bridegroom took up lamentation. Let's look at 30. Spoke peaceable words unto them, but was all deceit, like Scripture has said. When they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city, smote it very sore, and destroyed much of the people of Israel. When he had taken the spoils of the city, he set it on fire, pulled down the houses, the walls on every side, but the women and children took they captive and possessed the cities. Then built a city of David with a great strong wall and a mighty towers, and made a stronghold for them, when they had put a sinful nation and wicked men and fortified themselves therein. They stored also with the armor and victuals, and when they had gathered together, they laid up there, so that became a sore snare. It was a place and lie wait against the sanctuary for an evil adversary to Israel. Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary and defiled it. Murder. And so much that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them, whereupon the city was made a habitation of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her, and her own children left her. Her sanctuary was laid waste like a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning. Her Sabbaths into reproach. Her honor into contempt. Hello. Will you fight when they try to take your Shabbat away, or will you just give in? Because you're getting tired anyway. As had been her glory, so was her dishonor increased, and her excellency was turned into mourning. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one. Everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to this religion. So, I don't know, HR law, such from the White House comes in. Law, such for the European Union. Law, such from the United Nations. You see this. I hope y'all see this. So they forbade burnt offerings, sacrifice, no drink offerings, profaning the Sabbath, no festival days, pollute the sanctuary, set up altars, groves, chapels, idols, eating swine's flesh, unclean beast, leave your children uncircumcised, forget your Torah, change the ordinances. And if you do these things, if you continue to keep Shabbat, you're going to die. Who's going to go that far? And I wanted to read that, and I wanted to look at something Yeshua said in Matthew 24 and 21. Our great teacher said, For then shall there be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh should be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days be shortened. So what Yahshua just said is that what happened before his time in the Maccabees, what's coming is going to be worse than what we just read. Now, if you walking in this walk and you in this way, you in this faith, even though that one slide with it ain't got nothing to do with this little bitty spot right here, but it's got everything to do with it. It's going to be the exact same thing again. It's going to be worse. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Yahshua said it will be worse in those days. And I just read verse upon verse upon verse of killing, destruction, murder, chaos, sacrilegious, all because of that Torah. So Satan's infiltrators infiltrate your mind, infiltrate your heart, and people in our midst. That's if one thing you need to take away about if anything, about this week should be your takeaway about infiltration of your mind, your heart, and people in our midst. Chanukah has been a great example for us to watch and follow, and it is a revolving door. That past tells a story to our future. These are the things we have to deal with. COVID, mutations, crazy politics, Russia, China, vaccines, food shortage, gas prices, money, dollar going down. These are things that we got to deal with. UFOs. These are things that we got to deal with. It's going on all around you. Ain't got nothing to do with you, but it's got everything to do with who? You. Because you have his name. If you have his Torah, you have his name. So I know it's not over. I mean, it ends at sundown. So continue to Monday sundown. Sorry, Monday sundown. I need to start counting better. But things we got to think about. Chanukah tells us a story about where it's going to go. And if it was how bad it was in their time, Yahshua says it's going to be way worse. If they went that hard after your Torah, what are they going to do this time? So, things to consider as we continue to celebrate Chanukah. May you be blessed. Look forward to seeing your lovely faces during Rosh Chodesh tonight. And hope you enjoy this, you like it. Share it, subscribe, all that stuff. And don't want your money, just want your attention. In Yahshua's name, we do these things in honor of our forefathers who went before us. And it's an honor to share this stuff with you. And we have some videos in past years. We go a little bit more to the history stuff. If you like that kind of stuff, feel free to go back and check it out and have your scripture there with you too. And so have a blessed day. Hope you have a great week. Shalom.